Hi, I'm Mayor Jim Garing. This is Meeting with the Mayor. And today we're very fortunate to have Senator Eddie Lucio, our senator from McAllen and District 27. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you, Mayor.
Now, I say senator from McAllen, but most people think you're a senator from Brownsville, but you have a lot more territory than just Cameron County.
I actually don't live in Brownsville and haven't lived in Brownsville for the last 15 years. I live right outside the city limits off of Highway 100, the highway that goes to Los Fresnos and South Padre Island. Bought some acreage out there and built myself a home for my wife and I.
You have a house on Resaca?
I have a little Resaca. It's a beautiful place, and we're very blessed to have it. We've been married 51 years, and I think that's going to be our final place to live, I guess. I love it out there. It's very serene, very quiet. I have 9 cats, 5 dogs, and about 3 billy goats, and I'm pretty happy. It keeps me busy when I'm not doing my state business.
Well, it was wonderful seeing Mrs. Lucio. She was at the last function last weekend.
That's right.
And very nice to see her again.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes, sure. You know, you talked about that. We're going to talk about your district and all that, but you mentioned living right outside the city, and you're chair of the Intergovernmental Affairs. And I think the annexation bill maybe went through your committee, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, the annexation has a special committee that is set up, and right before the session ended, Governor Patrick asked me, called me to the podium, and during the session he says, Eddie, I'm starting up a committee on redistricting. Would you like to serve on it? I says, absolutely, I'd love to. I am chairman of my own committee, Intergovernmental Relations. I'm vice chairman of Education, Public Education. I'm also a member of Veterans, the Veterans and Border Security Committee, and lastly, I'm a member of the State Affairs Committee, where all the big bills go.
Right, and the annexation bill, because you live right outside the city, now the city can't annex any property unless...
Oh, I'm sorry, you said annexation. Yeah. Please forgive me, I misheard you, and I apologize. Annexation does go to my committee, absolutely. I don't know why I was focused on redistricting. Yes, and those issues, those bills do go to the committee that I chair. Yes, sir.
You know, one of the concerns I had on the annexation bill, obviously cities, because we like to grow. I mean, that's how you know, it's important. But also the burden it's going to put on counties, as you know, being senator for so long. You know, we still have colonias. We're still cleaning up colonias, and counties don't have building permit. They don't have zoning. They don't provide fire protection necessarily. They don't pay for street lights, and so we're really worried that as cities don't have the ability to annex, that there's going to be a growth of substandard subdivisions. I don't want to call them colonias per se, because they may have, you know, the basic water and sewer sometimes, but I think it's just really going to be difficult for the counties to keep up with the unscrupulous developer who's going to develop substandard developments.
Unfortunately, Mayor, you hit it right on the nail right on the head. There are some cities that are going around colonias. Brownsville's a prime example. And by the way, it's my birthplace. It is, I consider it my hometown. But it went around a colonia by the name of Cameron Park. And now the Cameron Park Colonia is situated inside the entire city limits of Brownsville. They did not annex it. Yes, I have been trying to pass legislation, and I have done successfully on the Senate side to empower the counties to give them what we call limited ordinance making authority. That way they can control, you know, developments in the rural areas, and making sure that there's infrastructure, roads, and water, wastewater infrastructure as well. But that's not the case. And there's still many, many hundreds of colonias in Hidalgo County and Cameron County that are substandard.
We just absorbed one, and we spent about $1 million on drainage, and the county provided some roadways. You know, ironically, I think over the years, it was been the rural senators who didn't want the county to have ordinance-making authority, not necessarily the urban senators, and I always thought it would almost be the opposite of that. But but that's the way it's worked out.
But I think what it is the developers themselves. They have a very strong lobbying group that obviously they're able to knock off my bill that I've passed several times in the House, and it fails to get a vote at the 11th hour. And it's really disheartening, because I think quality of life for people who buy lots or property outside the city limits of cities should have the ability to drive into their homes without having to park a block away when it rains, should have the water, wastewater infrastructure that is set up. Now, the other side of that is developers saying that, well, that's a multi-million-dollar issue for us, and we haven't sold the lots and all. I mean, we're spending money that we're not going to see soon. I think they have to, obviously invest if they're going to make money in the future. And that investment, though, goes a long ways, because we have seen a lot of health issues that take place in these substandard subdivisions, and diseases, they know no boundaries. I'm trying to say, and it will spread into the cities, and then you'll have hopefully not an epidemic. Could have an epidemic that would cost a lot of problems.
Yeah, when people buy property, unless it's raining, they don't pay much attention to drainage, and then it's too late. But the governor's, I mentioned the governor's office, that we, as a city, we didn't want to, he was trying to protect, say, the mom and pop farm from being annexed, but really we want to do it to regulate development. There's processes now where you can annex without making them require anything, or they agree to annex if they ever develop, but we won't touch them until they do, so that you can expand city limits to go out and get the other ones on the outer ring that are actually developing. And I think there's ways of doing that. Hopefully, before we get too long down the road, we get to readdress that issue, because I think, I know why it was done. A lot of areas up north, they have subdivisions, they have their own homeowner association, they have their own security, their own swimming pools, their own parks. Why do they need hike and bike trails? Why do they need to be annexed to a city? But we don't develop like that in the valley. In many parts of the state, we develop in, say, 20-acre tracts. There's one road going through. There are no homeowner associations or those kind of things. And so
the problem also becomes, as you know, that people living right outside the city limits want city services. They want, they want law enforcement. They want fire departments to come if there's a major issue. They want those services that are provided by the taxpayers within the city limits. And, it obviously costs money, and that's why cities want to have that annexation power to be able to bring in areas that would help them obviously provide the services that are needed. I did pass one bill a long time ago, actually in the 1990s, one of my first bills when I went into the Senate, and it dealt with Los Fresnos. There was some people that were right outside the city limits of Los Fresnos that did not want to get annexed. So my bill simply said that, okay, we'll have an election, but if the people there are successful in not in saying, look, we're not going to be annexed, and they vote for not to be annexed, then don't expect the city to provide those services.
Right. And I think that's where we're heading a little bit. People will say initially, because the developer has to agree to two, I don't want to be annexed, and then the development doesn't come out to what everybody expected it to be, and then they're going to be requesting annexation, and the city's going to say, that's not fair to our taxpayer either, because we didn't require this, the developer wasn't required to put the same amenities in that subdivision, and why should existing taxpayers have to that burden? We've done some of that. I mean, Balboa Acres, we probably spent $25 million after we annexed that on drainage and all kinds of things. We're still dealing with some problems there. It either shouldn't have been developed or certainly not developed in the way it was in the first place. So those are issues that they're difficult to measure. But I think the state this time with kind of one sweeping one. It's a big state, so it makes sense.
I'm thankful to have the opportunity to work with you and other elected officials. in municipalities in the valley to address these issues. You know, I want to make sure that there's balance of powers, and I don't want to shut off the cities in any way from having the ability to grow and to be able to, if we have a tax decrease, what we're going to have, property tax relief, we're going to have in the next several years because of the Public School Reform Act of this year, then it's going to be incumbent on us to make sure we give you the additional tools to work with to make ends meet.
That's changed now. Public schools, I read this, I think in Texas, it was national or Texas, more than 50% of the kids don't go to traditional public schools. They either go to IDEA or parochial schools. And so I was telling the superintendent, you're never going to pass a bond issue ever again because 50% of your parents had no vested interest in that. And so I think competition's great, but there's got to be some, you know, I don't know how that's all going to end up. But
well, if the state is going to allow that to happen and create that issue that you just described, then we're going to have to step up to the plate. We had an incredible amount of money that we invested in our public schools this session, like never before, in the billions of dollars. And we're going to have to do that for school infrastructure as well, because you're right. It's going to be hard and harder to pass, you know, bond issues that will allow school districts to have the resources to build schools.
Yeah, it's hard to argue against, hey, I want to send my kid to the best school I can. You know, and competition's, I think, a good thing, but at the same time, you can't leave a whole group of population behind because of lack of facilities. Or
as a legislator, though, Mayor, it's real hard for me, for example, to take this side or that side. I'm kind of right here, and I'm saying that you or anyone else that's a parent should have the ability to choose the school for your kids. Parental choice is what I call it. Not school choice, not vouchers, but parental choice. I think we should leave it to the parent to be able to select the school that is best fitted for his or her child. That's the wave of the future. It's already here, and I think we're going to be going in that direction in the future, regardless of who's serving in the legislature.
You know, I was thinking about living on the border, so different in schools. I was down at the bridge the other day, and there are school buses dropping off kids that live in Mexico that go to school here. And a lot of those kids are dual citizens, so they're American citizens. They get off the bus and cross the bridge into Mexico, and the next morning they're coming and getting on buses and literally going to, and because they had school choice, they can go to any school in the county. That's right. And that's pretty, I thought that's what the border's so different. It's so wonderful about the border, right, when you think about it.
Well, life is different than it is in Dallas or other parts of the state or country, and we have to step up to that challenge. We're going to have to make a decision on whether or not we follow the Constitution as well, because the U.S. Constitution says we shall educate all children that are in our country. So, it's one that's being debated at this time at the Washington level. But until we have a clear-cut, direction from the federal government, we're going to follow the Constitution and just try to do our best to make sure that we have an educated citizenry. And you know as well as anybody, because you're at the forefront of all that is happening, Mayor, we're very fortunate. We've come a long ways in public school finance. We've come a long ways in making sure that our young people that want to go to college is given that opportunity. And now, as of late, those that live within a threshold of $75,000 or less in their household income can do that. And I'm pretty excited for thousands of young people that are going to school who otherwise would not want to go into debt or don't have the resources to do so.
Yeah, fair public school financing has been. I used to represent the county education district. I think you were probably a senator back then when they had that, and that was where a smaller scale, I think there was 12 counties involved. Only one paid, whether it was Williamson County, where all their own gases, and all the other cities got the money, and kind of was a Robin Hood on a local level with the counties, and that didn't pass custom. It was like 4 or 5 years, I guess, that lasted. And then we changed another process. So school education's always been, since you've been a senator, certainly, and probably before, it's been an issue of how they do it and what's the state's responsibility and local, and it got even more complicated, obviously, with charter school success that they've had. What do you think's the biggest change since when you started as a senator or even a House of Representative member?
Wow, that's a big question.
I shouldn't have
It's
guessed.
a long answer to that. I think we can start with infrastructure. You know, let's start with the fact that we didn't have an interstate highway in 1987, and we've been working real hard to be able to get one up to the last couple of years, few years. So now we have more than one, and we're on a national map, which we weren't, a business map. So based on the fact that, you know, our ports of entries, especially land ports of entries going into Mexico, are pretty busy, especially right here in the far McAllen area. We need infrastructure funds. Millions and millions of new dollars have come our way because of that, and we can start there. We've connected the entire valley. I just passed a bill that creates a transit system in the valley, and I look forward to light rail, you know, in the future, where, you know, our students can get to school, our people, for example. I know a lot of people that come to Renaissance or McAllen Medical from Brownsville, and they could ride from Brownsville, from Cameron County here, and vice versa, depending on where their doctors are. It's good for the higher education as well. So there's a lot of great things that are going to go into infrastructure when it comes to highways. Our higher education obviously has evolved. I was fortunate to be the only senator back in the 1990s, and I carried the bill that brought the University of Texas to the Valley. You remember that. Worked with Dr. Cunningham and others.
I was the last lawyer for Pan Am, right? Before it was UT.
My alma mater, Pan American University.
Well, before it was UTPA, it was Pan American.
There you go.
And I was the last lawyer before, and then when they went to university.
Well, you've been there. You've been at the forefront. I remember all those years, but you know, that has evolved. It was UT, Pan American, UT Brownsville. Then there was a partnership with TSC down there, and then we worked on a study for a medical school for 7 years. Started at 90, ended at 97. We created the Regional Academic Health Center. So higher education and medical education and the School of Research, the School of Public Health, all those things came together, and now we have UTRGV with the medical school. It's a dream come true for those of us that had planned that and worked together like we did, and others up and down the valley. It was exciting to be able to do that work and then see it become a reality.
I think I've been here since '78, so I'm kind of a relatively newcomer. But I think the difference is we were kind of ignored, and we got big enough in all those other things where they couldn't ignore us, and then all these great things have happened to us. And you know, get SpaceX now. I mean, who thought of that? And
you know, I have to counter you a little bit, with all due respect, Mayor. We were bypassed. I won't say we weren't, but it doesn't mean that we didn't have power. We had tremendous power at the federal level. You remember Senator Benson was the chair of finance in the U.S. Senate, and Kika de la Garza was the chair of agriculture. The whole world came in to see him. I mean, we had power back in those days. Now, why it took so long, I don't know. I don't want to be critical. There might have been some things happening. Maybe the rest of the country didn't agree with them. But when you have that kind of power, you have the power to compromise. You have the power to make things happen. I happen to love who I work with. The delegation is probably the strongest delegation I've ever seen since I've been in Austin since 1987. And we have 2 senators now, because I moved over a little bit to make sure we had another district set up for a Senate seat in Texas. And then we have an additional 2 state representatives. Every one of those individuals are so focused and so engaged and not just helping their individual communities, but coming together. But the biggest attribute I think that we have, the biggest thing that has happened is that we've learned to sit at the table together. You know, I've been criticized for working so closely with the Republicans. I says, well, tell me how we're gonna pass a bill with just 12 Democrats. We need the Republican senators, the Republican representatives, and they need us. It's time that we did that. This last couple of sessions, we've sat down, we find common ground, and the budget was approved unanimously in the Senate, over $250 million, and Governor Dan Patrick was elated that we were able to come together bipartisanly. That's what we have to do in the future if we're to succeed. I think we can still make some wonderful changes if we listen to our local leadership. You know what's best for municipal government, and you know what's best when it comes to the needs of the people here in McAllen. We represent the same people. We're in this together. We need to make sure we keep working together, and I keep carrying your message to Austin. Senator Hinojosa needs to do the same thing, and every state rep needs to do the same thing. And if we do that, I'm sure we'll succeed in our endeavors. But if we throw, and for lack of a better phrase, if we throw bombs at each other politically, it's not gonna get us anywhere. It's gonna divide us even more, and that's something that I don't wanna see, you know, in Texas.
I think the valleys, especially with your leadership, has been viewed as not radical either side. Has been, hey, we need to work together to get things done, and it's not been radical from a leftist standpoint or progressive, especially the valley. And you know, even when the state leadership kind of went that way, the valley didn't go with that. You know, and then I think that backlash was what we see now as Republicans have control for the last 20 years.
Can you imagine when I was growing up, there was 10 of us, 6 boys, 4 girls, and we all had different opinions or different needs or wants. And we sat at the table, try to figure out what we were going to do as a family. It's the same thing. And of course, the leaders were my mom and dad. They oversaw, it was the governor, lieutenant governor, or the speaker. They oversee this discussion that's taking place every other year on odd-numbered years when we meet in Austin for legislative session. And it's amazing what we can do when we are selfless, you know, and making sure that we do the right thing for people. And of course, I have to tell you, my faith leads me to my decision making. So that's, to me, is most important.
You've always said that, you know, and it's important.
I think it's the right thing to do. Is, you know, we have to remember that we boast about it. We pledge allegiance to our flag. We're one country, one family under God.
And one thing that's different from the old days is you have a lot more committee meetings and all that. So you're busy this summer, much more than, say, 20 years ago. It's almost a full-time job now.
It is a full-time job, and we take it seriously. We want to be effective. Who wants to go there and just not go to a meeting or sit around and do nothing? We want to be able to come back and show results. We are a results-oriented type of delegation here. That's why I think it's the strongest one we've ever seen in the Valley, and I applaud each one of our state representatives, our Senator Hinojosa, who serves with me in the Senate, and we hopefully have done the right thing for the Valley.
Well, I know you're very busy, and that's why I want to thank you for being with us today. And I know you have a busy afternoon too. So, Senator, I really appreciate it, and I think our viewers really got a little bit of an insight into what you do and how important you are for our area.
We're happy to discuss additional issues in the future, Mayor. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you. And this has been your meeting with the mayor. Thank you very much.
Our team. Stories that count from people who care.